What we see here is a starling murmuration. 100,000 individual birds flying together in unison. Look at the beauty, the wholeness, the harmony. Breathe it in. Sense the perfection of nature. Its balance, its infinite potential. When these starlings are together, they're strong, they're smart, they're beautiful. They can fight predators, they can find food, they protect each other. And the incredible thing here is that they're only following simple rules of proximity and speed. And when they do, every single one of them, something new emerges. A collective consciousness. What if we humans can act in that same state of harmony, the same state of connection? Could we also tap into that immense power and sensation that we feel from just looking at these birds on the screen? Could we experience this kind of connection in every aspect of our lives? Could we find a guiding light that will bind us to a force so strong, yet so far from where we are now? Yes, we can. We need to want this state for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones, for our communities, for our countries, for the whole world. We can find this force in our connection, in a state of collective consciousness, where we feel as one, where each individual maximizes their fullest potential together with the collective, bringing balance not just to themselves, but to all those around them, to all of humanity. But unlike the starlings, this does not come natural to us. We need to grow, we need to choose it, we need to want it, to need it. It's all up to us. Okay. Welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. So today's live session is going to be about how to attain collective intelligence. First of all, I hope you enjoyed the clip. Credit goes to Marco Volk. Rachel will post a link to that to the video in the chat. For those who are wondering, it was in the Netherlands, that murmuration. I wanted to start today with that video before we say anything, before we even talk. Because when I watched it, and I've watched it many times, I get this sensation of the power of that collective consciousness, that all these starlings that are flying together, they're not just collaborating or sharing information or resources, they're acting as a single organism, and it's incredible. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what collective consciousness is, how to attain it according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, and hopefully we'll be able to already start sensing it over this next hour. So now would be the time to introduce yourself, say hi to everyone else, say where you're from. If you enjoy these sessions or even this one from what you've seen so far, then please like, subscribe, share, and it will make sure that more people can join us. Maybe we can even start building this collective consciousness right here, right now. As usual, we have Rachel with us in the chat, who's posting links and answering technical questions there, and also Ruth, who is supporting and taking your questions, posting them to me. So feel free to ask anything, and we'll get right into it. All right, so let's begin. Here we go. So today's topic is how to attain collective consciousness. So there's a lot of talk about collective consciousness, what it really means, is interpreted in many ways. But I just want to tell you to start off with, we're not talking here about maybe this new age concept that emerged recently in the 20th century. We're talking about a concept, a Kabbalistic concept of collective consciousness that's been around for about 6,000 years. And we're going to delve into that, understand what it is and how we can attain it. So let's start off with answering the simple question of what is collective consciousness. I'll be looking here at your questions and comments. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is collective consciousness? So it's when some kind of organism, it shares a collective mind, a collective sensation. It's not just sharing values that, we think the same, we have similar values or a similar moral code, and then it means that we have some kind of collective consciousness. That may be some kind of beginning, it may be, part of it, but it's not what actual collective consciousness really is. It's when you actually feel in your bones every single part of nature and all of humanity as part of yourself, as a part that you really love, that you appreciate. Not only the people, that are close to you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, but when you feel this way to every single part of reality, every single human being, even those that you hate. And then maybe if you share this collective consciousness with them, then you'll truly understand them, and then you'll no longer hate them, you'll love them. So we're going to open up this topic throughout this session. And that was kind of just an intro to what collective consciousness is. So let's start off with understanding, first of all, that everything in nature is already a unified collective network, right? So we have every single part of nature is part of this collective network, and it binds us, whether we like it or not. But unfortunately, we fail to sense that we are part of the system, right? So we know that we're interconnected, and we know, that if one thing happens on one side of the world, then it can influence us on the other side of the world. We know that, and sometimes we feel it, especially now with COVID. We feel the global impacts immediately, but we don't really act like that is the case, like we're completely interdependent, like cells in a human body. We do not act that way. And the more that we evolve, the more apparent the system of interconnection becomes. So if we looked at humanity 5,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago, the nature and depth of our interconnectedness was not apparent at least, as it is today. So in nature, everything follows perfect balance, right? If we observe nature, then we see that everything acts in a balance of two forces, plus and minus. Breathe, inhale, exhale, breathe in, breathe out. And by that, balance is maintained. However, if we look at the human level, just as human beings, then we see that we fail to follow these very same laws. Now I want to show you a clip from a course that you've already seen bits and pieces of. It's a course, it's basically a course about collective consciousness. It's Kabbalah and the science of human emergence. And human emergence is the emergent level humanity needs to reach. So let's have a quick look if there are questions. I'll take a couple quick questions and then we'll watch the clip. Sushi Smita, I hope I probably said it wrong, I'm sorry, is asking, is it insane that if I wish to love everyone without even knowing what love is? It's a little insane, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's good that you have that inclination. And the reason why I said it's a little insane is because most people do not feel that way. But if you do, then that's good. And you should let that desire of yours lead you and push you towards understanding what true love is. Not egoistic love, which is I love what gives me benefit, right? I'm in a relationship, and when I stop getting benefit from that relationship, then I break it off, or I love certain types of food, so I eat them, right? That's egoistic love. Kabbalistic love, we're talking about true love, which is something we're not even familiar with, and the fact that you aspire for that, Sushi Smita, that is great. Kupla is asking, can people pretend they are like the birds with dance? They can pretend, Kupla, and they actually should pretend. It doesn't mean that they'll be in that state, but by pretending to be in that state, it will already bring us closer to that state. And throughout this session, you'll understand why. And if you don't, then follow up with another question. Okay, so let's move on to another clip. So this is from the course on Kabbalah, Kabbalah and the science of human emergence. It's a course that I'm instructing. I hope you enjoyed the clip. Let's take a look. 3.8 billion years ago, something incredible happened. A rock came to life. That was our beginning. No one knows exactly how or where life emerged, just that it did. So what can almost 4 billion years of evolution teach us about the next level of human development? When we look around us, we see life everywhere. Trees, people, animals, insects, plants. The vast complexity of life around us started from very simple life forms. And if we carefully observe the stages of evolution and emergence, we might be able to identify a pattern that can teach us something about the emergence of mankind as well. So let's go back 3.8 billion years ago to the first life form known to us. It was a single-celled organism called prokaryotes. Back then, they were considered super complex beings, in comparison to the rocks and minerals. Now, there were different types of these cells, each doing different things. For example, one type was a bacterial cell that converted solar energy. Another cell used oxygen to break down materials like sugar. Each cell had its unique abilities and made a unique contribution to maintain balance in its ecosystem. However, they would also fight for resources, and this went on for like 1 billion years until something amazing happened. The different types of cells reached a conclusion that they're better off sharing resources and responsibilities. Now, at first, it was just basic forms of collaboration. Give me this, take that. But then a whole new level of collaboration emerged, and this changed everything. The cells started behaving like a single organism, as if they shared a collective consciousness. And when that happened, bam! A new level of life had emerged. That process happened again and again, leading to the evolution of the nucleated cell, about 2.1 billion years ago. That was a big deal. We're talking about a cell that's 1,000 times bigger and much more complex. It's like comparing a house to a huge city. Now, these nucleated cells, they carry incredible complexity. They have about 30,000 recycling centers that take male-functioning proteins and turn them to useful amino acids. They have about 1,000 powerhouses that transfer energy, and much, much more. Scientists aren't exactly sure how the nucleated cell was formed, but one thing is certain. Thousands of components in this little city are working in perfect harmony, and they appear to be sharing a form of collective consciousness. So, evolution continues, and about 600 million years ago, the nucleated cell begins to come together and form a multicellular organism, like plants and animals. Now, they have trillions of nucleated cells that weren't just cooperating. They shared a collective consciousness and became incredible things like sea sponges and frogs and Venus flytraps and tree-dwelling mammals and amphibians and dinosaurs. And eventually, about 200,000 years ago, our species began to evolve. Now, in a relatively short time, we found tons of ways to communicate, to cooperate, to trade with each other, but also to wage wars and destroy the planet. So what is the next stage of human evolution? Well, if we look at 4 billion years of history, we can see a pattern. Individual things connect and they form collectives that enable the emergence of a higher level of consciousness. Now, thousands of years ago, Kabbalists described something that's strikingly similar. They describe humanity as a single collective soul, an emergent state that we're all part of, and they call it the soul of Adam HaRishon. In this soul, all the pieces work together in perfect harmony. They give each individual the ability to realize its full potential, both for itself and for the whole. So, if our emergent state is a state of collective consciousness, where we feel and act as one harmonious entity, why does it look like we're so far from this state, living in a world that's filled with chaos, crisis, destruction? Stay tuned to find out. Okay, now I'm muted. Okay, so basically what we're looking at is we're looking at 4 billion years of life on the planet that keep going through stages of evolution from a certain level of complexity to some kind of separation and then a new state of negotiation, etc., which leads to a higher level, a more complex and a more advanced level, right? And this has been happening for 4 billion years. So it's a natural process. It's the process of, basically it's evolution, but it's evolution from a different perspective. We're looking at development of complex systems that always emerge, and when they do, there's like a new form of this collective consciousness. So when this new form emerges, when like that multicellular organism emerged, it's not that the different parts of it just, communicate, they become one. And when they become one, there's a new thing. There's something incredible, like a new level. Like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. 1 + 1 = 3, etc., etc., etc. So, at the end of the clip, there was a question. If the emergent state is the human collective consciousness, then why does the world look like it does? What's happening here? There's like this dissonance between what we should be leading towards, this state of collective consciousness, of emergent of the human state, and where we are now, like a chaotic human race, basically. So we will answer that, but I want to take another clip. I don't see any questions, so that means either that everything is clear or nothing is clear. But if you do have questions, then please post them in the chat so I can refer to them. In the meantime, let's watch another clip which talks, well, you'll see in a second. Where is it? Okay. Quick question until I put the clip up from Akililu. How do you know about 4 100 billion years events. Actually, it's 4 billion, 3.8. But how do I know? Because luckily we have a very, very wide network of science that is able to explore and examine this world. And in that, scientists are good. Everything around us, all the technology, is from science. And Kabbalah respects science as the method for the corporeal world, for the material world, and we're basing it on that. Let's go on. I see another question from Corey Blake asking, can you love too much? You can't love too much, but maybe what you're describing as love too much isn't really love. If you're talking about this psychological dependency, then that's not love, that's a dependency, right? That you love someone so much that you don't want them to do something or go somewhere. Is that really love? Does that mean you love them? Probably not. So if that's what you're asking about, then that's probably not love. If we're talking about true love, then you can't love too much. It's like an infinite sensation of care. The closest feeling is like a mother to her newborn baby. That would be kind of the closest. That's actually of the branch of the spiritual root of love. Only a mother's love to her child is egoistic. She can't not love her baby. It comes to her naturally. It's an instinct, basically. Luckily so, because then she wants to care and raise the baby. So you could say it's a natural instinct of any mother in any mammal and in any animal, actually, and I think on all levels, to nurture their newborns. Another question. This state, a question from Kevin. I'm not trying to understand the question, Kevin. You're asking, is this state a constant per se that we enter and then never leave? If you're talking about the state of this collective consciousness, then yes, it is a state that it's basically, it's like saying once nature has evolved from single cellular organisms to multicellular organisms, then this new organism, does it always remain more complex? Yes, of course. Once our human bodies have evolved to what they are today, these Homo sapiens, does it go back and return to its previous less evolved state? No, it never does. There's always development, always evolution. How to differentiate between egoistic love and pure love? You can't differentiate between these two kinds of love if you do not have these two kinds of vessels. Because if you only have an egoistic vessel, then you can't measure pure love in it. So to differentiate these two kinds of love, then you need to develop these two kinds of vessels. The vessel of reception with upon that the intention of bestowal. Okay, let's keep going. Keep posting your questions. We'll get back to them in a couple of minutes. I just want to continue with the process. So right now, let's just do a quick recap. So we saw starlings' murmuration. We saw this beautiful phenomena of nature, that birds in a murmuration, they become like this. Basically, they share like a collective consciousness. We talked about what it is, that it's not just sharing beliefs or moral codes. It's feeling everything in every part of nature as yourself, everything. And then we talked about nature as being a unified collective network, that all of nature, as we're finding today more and more, is that it is becoming interconnected and interdependent. So every little thing, the butterfly effect, the flap of the wings of a butterfly can create a hurricane on the other side of the world. So this is true also on the human level. There's a lot of science backing this up. The whole, the book Connected, Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler. We saw a clip last week that when they talked about networks, that everything you do has ripples to three layers of your social networks. So, if you quit smoking, then you increase the chances of your first circle to quit smoking by about, 40%. And the second circle, your friends' friends, and your friends' friends' friends. So you know, if you suddenly have an urge to do something, then where does that urge really come from? Does it come from you, or maybe your friend's friend's friend decided to do it and now it's rippling onto you? So anyway, it's becoming clear how interconnected and interdependent we are. And I want to show you something. This clip, it actually talks about how our bodies, are also part of this natural sphere of being programmed, being wired for connection. So let's take a look at the clip and then we'll continue the discussion. In the meantime, post your questions in the chats.
So throughout this section, we've covered a lot of ground with regards to how positive social relations affect virtually every level and area of human experience. Well, what if we ask the question, where does it all come from? Why is it that interactions with others can supercharge our abilities, optimize our performance, and improve our well-being? Different fields of research today are weaving together a comprehensive answer, and it's actually one that makes a whole lot of sense. Human beings are hardwired to connect, or in other words, we're connected by nature. When you perform an action or experience an emotion, specific neurons in your brain fire. But as it turns out, when you look at someone else performing that very same action, a set of the same neurons will fire as if you were performing the action yourself. These are the recently discovered mirror neurons, and they essentially connect us with others. This is why we cringe when we observe someone in pain, or we get emotional in movies, and so on. And much like these mirror neurons, we seem to have many built-in biological mechanisms that help us, well, sort of simulate what others are going through. Your vagus nerve, which begins at the top of the spinal cord and reaches all the way down to your spleen and liver, is unique to mammals. It helps you use your voice, coordinate breathing and heart rate, regulate digestive processes, as well as several other functions. Berkeley researchers wanted to know what happens to the vagus nerve when you evoke empathy in people. So they showed their subjects imagery of other people suffering or being prideful. They had them listen to people share sad or inspiring stories and experiences. They found out that the more you feel compassion, the stronger your vagus nerve fires. The more you feel pride, by the way, the weaker it fires. So we actually have a physiology that tracks the feeling of your common humanity with other people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, or political views. When you look at a young toddler and smile or make some facial expression, many times they would mimic your expression in a really cute way. They have a natural social mimicking facility that doesn't require any independent thinking. And guess what? Adults do it too. If you slow down time and you track people's facial muscles, you'll see that they spontaneously mimic the emotional expressions they're seeing. Moreover, it's been shown that when you limit someone's ability to mimic a face in front of them, say by having them bite on something so their facial muscles are constrained, they won't be as good at interpreting the faces they see. In other words, our inborn facial mimicking ability helps us to understand others around us. Scientists have set out to explore what happens in our brains and our bodies when we feel connected or disconnected from our social group. When you feel rejected by your social environment, your body secretes the cortisol hormone, which over time can cause anxieties, attention disorders, and even memory losses in the long run. Researchers call this social pain because brain scans show the brain responds to this similar to how it responds to actual physical pain. It's so tangible that a Tylenol pill, which you would take for a headache, alleviates that same social pain. On the other hand, when we feel accepted and welcomed into our social group, our body secretes oxytocin, which lowers our stress, reduces pain, improves healing, and does a few other interesting things. These were just a few examples showing how we're hardwired to connect. And with the wealth of data we have today, this review could easily go on a lot longer. We are connected, and that explains why experiencing and nurturing positive social relations is at the very core of everything that makes us happy, healthy, and successful.
Okay, so hold on, sound on, yes. So the clear conclusion of this clip is that this body of ours is built biologically, chemically, it's built for connection. And maybe I'll also answer David, who wrote, well, this talk about connection sounds religious. Not religious at all. Tons of multidisciplinary areas of science today are finding that social connection is key to happiness and success. We actually have a course about it called Happiness and Success. And you can find it on Kabbalah. And it talks, this clip was from that course. It's a course that brings a purely scientific perspective about the nature of connection and how it's embedded into every layer of humanity. This was one clip from that course, so David, I recommend you take a look at that, and anyone else who's interested. Basically, but let's get back to this kind of bottom line here. So this body of ours, let's say we're animals. Well, not let's say this physical body is like an animal. We're more evolved, etc. But we're a mammal basically. So this body of ours, this mammal, is hardwired to connect. It's built for positive social connection, right? So what's the problem? So the problem is our mind is not. And that is the key difference between everything in nature except for human beings. We have ego. Ego. Simple as that. If you look at a lion, then it devours its prey, but it doesn't do that with an intention to do harm to its prey. It does it with the intention to fulfill its necessity. But human beings, they're driven by this constant desire to succeed on the account of others, right? If someone loses, then that automatically ups my status, So if we have the same, then I don't feel that good. But if someone loses what they have, then I already feel better, even though I still have the same, right? So human beings have this additional force called ego, and this force is different. It's separate than the body. The body is built for human connection. It's hardwired to it. We feel good when we connect. We're better, we're more successful, we're better learners, we make more money, we're happier, we're better at our jobs, we're more creative. All of this happens from social human connection, positive social connection. But we still have a really hard time doing it. And that's counterintuitive. So the reason is there is imbalance between all of the natural level of the universe, the still, the vegetative, and the animate. And this physical body of ours is part of the animate. And between all of those things that work in perfect balance and are built for connection, and then the human level. The human level isn't the physical body, it's something that's beyond that. And it's this human desire of the ego, which is shifting everything to destruction and chaos. But it is purposeful. There is a reason for it. There is a reason for this ego, and it's good. And David is asking, is the imbalance a flaw? It's a flaw because everything, all of nature aims towards harmony and balance. And balance, balance doesn't mean that everything is always a straight line. Balance can mean ups and downs, but that they're always balancing each other out, and then that's balance. If you have a straight line, it's basically death. So imbalance is a flaw if it's not constantly aiming towards stability. If it's just one force that's constantly growing and growing, and there's nothing that's pushing it back to bring the system into balance, then yes, it is a flaw. Some more questions. How do we know? I think we answered that, when we do right or wrong. Actually, we didn't answer that. It's from Barrett, but it's a very similar question to how do we differentiate true love and egoistic love. So how do we know when we do right or wrong? There is actually only one right action and one wrong action. That's all there is. So the right action is aim towards connection, and the wrong action is go against connection. That's it. Because basically everything is a result of that. Everything is, if you're constantly striving to create this connection, this positive connection within humanity, within yourself, your surroundings, etc., then you're reconstructing a new system, which actually is a spiritual system, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So that's the only right action, and the only wrong action is not striving for that, basically. Question from D. Baker. What do you think our collective consciousness would evolve into? That's a great question, D. Baker. That's actually why I wanted to start with that starlings murmuration clip, which I hope you enjoyed. I hope you caught it, actually. So what would we evolve into? What do you think? I'd love to hear what all of you think of what humanity will evolve into if we reach this level of collective consciousness, just like those starlings. What would it look like if we human beings acted that way, behaved that way, sensed each other and lived together without canceling the individual? The individual, by that, can maximize their fullest potential. There is a reason why every person is different. Even our faces are different. That also stems from a spiritual root. Every single one is unique. And the uniqueness is actually discovered within that system. And until you reach that collective consciousness, then you can't really maximize your fullest potential. Another question. Will we reach collective consciousness in a blink of the eye, or will it happen gradually? I know that we are the last generation. The question from Funny Games. Okay, Funny Games. The answer is both. It's happening already now. It's been happening for not even 4 billion years, 14 billion years. It's all leading towards that. From the Big Bang, the eruption of energy and matter, and to start expanding and cooling and etc. And all of the process of evolution, the development of the universe and minerals and rocks and planets and plants and animals, etc. All of that has been leading to where we are now, where humanity is now, at the brink of its next level of evolution. So when this transition will happen, then yes, it'll be like the blink of an eye. But the entire system has been driving for it for billions of years. So you could say it's both. But the transition is, yes, it's quick. Let's see what else we have here. Why? Okay, this is a question from Adelina. Why are we so opposed to our own psychology? What provoked it? So that's a great question, and that's actually the question that I'm posing here. If we're all hardwired for connection, then why aren't we practicing it all the time? It's not that we're opposed to our own psychology. We're opposed to our own biology, to our chemistry. Our body emits oxytocin when we hug someone, or if we have a good positive interaction with a human being, then our body emits oxytocin, the love hormone, a hormone that's responsible for faster healing, more focus, greater creativity. It's an incredible hormone, and your body emits it when you have a positive interaction. So we're not opposed to our psychology, but our biology. And that's even crazier, because how can it be? So we will answer that in a moment. Actually, let's answer that now. So to understand why we're so opposed and what the purpose of this is, let's go back more than 14 billion years before there was even time. So we're looking at a mechanism called the collective soul of Adam HaRishon. So just to put us on the map, before the Big Bang, before there was a concept called time, there was a thought of creation. This thought was from an all-encompassing law of love, true love, and this thought, this force or light, it created something, a will, a desire, which is our substance. That's what it created. Now, this desire went through many stages, actually 125 degrees through spiritual worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And each world of these is divided into 5 worlds, and each of those into another 5. So 5 to the power of 3 is 125 altogether. The state that went from unity to separateness is 125 degrees. So in the world of Atzilut, there was a single soul. It's called the soul of Adam HaRishon. And it's a collective soul. Basically, you could say it's a collective consciousness. The first one ever. The very root of creation. That's what there was, a collective soul. And that soul, it shattered. It shattered into 600,000 pieces in the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and then Asiya. And then those 600,000 pieces shattered once again into what we see as humanity today. Approximately, today it's 8 billion pieces. Now, why did it shatter, you might be asking? That's the question. What is the purpose of this? Why can't we be like the rest of nature? That we work in balance and in harmony, and everything will be great. Why do we need this shattering, this breaking, if everything was already perfect? So I'll share an allegory with you. So it's a story of 2 twin brothers, and one twin brother is very, very successful businessman. He's a millionaire. He has the perfect life. He has a beautiful, smart wife and great kids, and he's all set. He has everything. The dream. He's living the dream. And his brother is a failure. He has nothing. He's homeless. He doesn't have money. He doesn't have a job. And when he really is on the streets already and he has no choice, he goes to his brother's house and he knocks on the door and he asks for help. Of course, his loving brother welcomes him in, dresses him, feeds him, sets up a place for him to sleep and stay there, welcomes him with all of his heart, to help him get back on his feet. So the poor brother, he's staying there for a while, and he's kind of settling in a little bit, and he's still depressed. And the big brother, he's trying to encourage him to uplift his spirits. So he says, what's happening? You're here. You can feel that this is yours, and feel free, feel at home. Basically, he wanted to make sure he's not feeling shame or anything. But it didn't help. So the big brother said, everything that I have, half of it is yours. You can have half of it. How's that? Then we're equal. And then the poor brother said, there is one thing that I want and you cannot give me. He said, what's that? So he said, I want to achieve this myself. So that is the exact situation that happened here. We were already in this perfect state, a state of collective consciousness, of perfection, of everything you can imagine, of goodness, of fulfillment, but we were like an embryo in a womb. We were annulled to the upper one. We had no independence. Now, if you want to take someone from that perfect state and you want them to attain it themselves, then what do? Well, like a baby when they're born, they're thrown out to the world, moving from a state of perfect nurture in the womb, getting everything they need before they can even think it, to being thrown out to the cruel, cold world. Why? And why are they so different than animals that in just a few days already reach their full development? No, human beings, they need, 20%, 30% of their life just to mature, just to learn how to do basic things, to grow up, to be an adult. 20 years. Some would argue even more. And why is that? Because the purpose of all of this is for us not to be annulled like an embryo in the womb, like a baby, like an infant, but for us to actually reach the level of this force of nature, or call it creator if you like. And it aims for nothing less than that. To be as the creator, as this force of nature, to be one with it, independently. And that is why this entire system shattered. And that is why we went through 14 billion years of evolution. And that is why today, when the human ego is reaching complete satiation, when it can no longer be fulfilled, and when all the world seems like it's in crises and everything is collapsing, and we're in a world pandemic, and it seems like we're, the worst possible state, this is actually labor pains to a new state of emergence, a new potential of humanity. And all we have to do is aspire for this and want it, and connect to the method of the wisdom of Kabbalah, which is this method exactly. It is how to reconstruct the collective soul. So let's conclude with one more clip, and then we'll take some more questions that we have here. So let's see.
At this critical point in time, we have to redefine.
Hold on, I saw there was no sound. I think, let's see. Okay.
At this critical point in time, we have to redefine what it means to be human. We have to choose a new identity, literally choose a new identity, and recreate ourselves anew as a humanity. Recreate ourselves as a brand new kind of living organism, a brand new kind of species, and recreate the organism as a cluster, as a group, rather than as a scattering of single individuals. We have to change our thinking about who we are in relationship to each other.
We've been living in a competitive society for too long, and the world we see is the result. The ego, the competitive ego. What we have to do is learn how to cooperate and drop the ego and realize, again, that if we have people in one country that are very poor and people that are very wealthy, the wealthy are going to have to get big armies and big fences to keep those other people out. It's not going to work with the divisions of society that we have today and the stratification.
Man has to go through a change to realize that his life should be lived for the unity of mankind, and that we're all like one man and one heart, and we're sharing that desire, sharing that thought. We're on mutual connection, making mutual concessions in reciprocity, like cells of a living body.
All right, so we have a little bit more time for some questions, and I see there are great questions here. So let's start shooting. Okay, we'll start off with a question from, it's actually not a question, it's a comment, but I'll read it. It's a nice comment from Isoke Jacobs. This experience is like a mum having the conversation with a rebellious child. Why are you so opposed to my rules? So the child can't yet see the whole picture. Now we're listening to mother. Nice. Question from Tracy. Mirzim, she's writing, okay, I'm lost. We will die to achieve this to become one. So sorry, crazy question. It's not a crazy question. It's a good question. Any question that you have is valid. No, we don't need to die to achieve this. Not at all. Actually, quite the contrary. Bala Sulam, the greatest Kabbalist of this kind of generation, or the last generation, he actually says that any person that hears about this has the ability to attain it in this life of theirs. So if you're hearing this now, Tracy, that means that you can attain this new level of collective consciousness while you are alive. A question from Bonaventura Bus. So, where does this interconnection lead to? What is the aim of being interconnected? Good question. I'll go back to the illustration of Adam HaRishon. to answer that. Okay, so when we're down here, and each one of us is part of this shattered soul, we're all separate, and we're all wrapped by this egoistic shell that is preventing us from feeling this connection among each other. And when we start connecting, what connects us is this light. It's this force of nature, or the creator, however you want to call it. I actually try not to use the word creator or God, because it already comes with a whole kind of big, package of misconceptions from childhood, from religions, etc. And Kabbalah, that speaks of God or the creator, speaks of nothing like what many of us have learned through religions. That's why I prefer to use the word nature. It's closer to what it actually is. It's a force of reality. So this force of reality, this force of nature, this energy, you could say, when we start connecting, when we start catching up to the interconnected and interdependent reality of the world we exist in, instead of having in contrast to that this overgrowing ego, if instead we begin to nurture that connection, then what forms these connections, what's revealed within these connections is that energy, is that light, that force of nature. And that force fulfills us and brings us to our purpose, to be like it, to be in a state of complete love, of complete light. So that's the purpose of it, to reach that level of the force of nature, of the creator. What else do we have? Do we have this view as one whole when we are born? If so, why do we lose it? A question from Kupla. There is kind of these myths that when babies are born, at least it's a myth in Judaism, that an angel teaches them the whole Torah, and then when they come out, they forget it. Of course, it's a misinterpretation of something else, of an embryo in spirituality, that he learns the Torah, the light, before the shattering. That's what it refers to. A baby that's born has nothing. It's like a cute little, like an animal, like a cute puppy. So this is a cute human child, but it has no spiritual quality in it whatsoever. A question from Matthew Kurian. Without ego, how can you work and survive in this world? It's a good question. So you're saying, if I give and I'm all loving and I have no ego, then I'll be devoured, and that's correct. So in the process of development, you have to work in these two lines in parallel. You have to work with the ego, and actually the ego isn't cancelled. It's just used, it's harnessed towards purpose. So the ego remains, only instead of it riding us and driving us, we begin to ride it and drive it. But what's the problem, if you imagine a world that's working like in this state of collective consciousness, then why would that not work? That would work beautifully. That would work. It would be so efficient and so, it would be perfect, actually. So I'm not sure if you're asking about how can you do that now when everyone else are egoists. So if that's what you're asking, then you have to behave in this world like this world. If you go, and you're all loving and bestowing to everyone, then they'll take advantage of you, no doubt. And you have to work, in reality. Okay, what else? A question from HJV is saying, humanity needs to go through all these painful events in order to feel a spiritual need. On the other hand, some others are somehow ready to embrace change. How can we do this together? Great question, HJV. So, just like when an embryo develops, there are different organs that develop in different stages. And it's not really clear why this happens, but that's how it develops, and that's how humanity as a collective is also developing. So different parts of the system are awakening, and different parts are not. So you don't need to strive to do it together with the parts that are not per se, but you need to feel the responsibility that you're the locomotive, you're leading all of humanity with your actions. And depending on your actions, and this is a lot of responsibility, I know, but it's the truth, that will determine the awakening of the entire system. So that's in your hands. Okay, we're actually out of time because in 3 minutes we have another live session, a live Q&A with Tony Kosinak. So I recommend you stay tuned. But it was great to be here, and it was great to get your questions, and it really gives a lot of hope that what we're doing here is we're building this collective consciousness. You know, so many people from so many countries, nationalities, religions, all just wanting to feel this point between us, you know, this to find the collective consciousness. And just that want of ours, that desire of ours, it already pulls us towards that state, because the state is already in existence. And all we need to do, we need to discover that we are already in that state. So I'm Gil Shear, this was Kabbalah Explained Simply, and today we spoke about how to attain collective consciousness. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please click the like or subscribe or share. I would appreciate that. So thank you all, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.